What if the quietest girl in school turned out to be the strongest? What if the one you overlooked was the one who saw everything? This is not just another school story. It's a powerful reminder that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it rolls. And sometimes, when the world is watching, it rises. In this emotional journey, meet Alina, a girl in a wheelchair who refuses to break, and Zora, the classmate who decided silence was no longer an option. Their story will move you, make you pause, make you angry, and most of all, make you believe. Because real change, it starts with one voice, or two. Stay to the end. This is the kind of story you'll want to carry with you, and maybe share with someone who needs it. It started on a Monday, the kind of Monday where the sky wore gray like a tired sweater, and the trees barely bothered to rustle. Cold, but not enough to complain. Still, it felt like something was holding its breath. At Juniper Creek Middle School, tucked away in a sleepy corner of Oregon's Willamette Valley, the halls buzzed with sleepy footsteps and the hiss of early morning lockers. Sixth graders tugged at jackets too big for their frames. Eighth graders leaned against walls, pretending they weren't already counting down to summer. But no one was. Watching the girl by the bike rack, her name was Elena Cortez, 12 years old, small brown curls tucked into a knit cap, and a blue hoodie pulled tight against the mist. She moved slowly, carefully, because her wheelchair, like the rest of her, had learned the art of quiet navigation. She didn't want to be seen, and yet she wanted to be known. There's a difference. Alina was born with brittle bone disease, osteogenesis imperfecta, which meant she had spent more time in casts and surgeries than recess or birthday parties. Her laugh was soft, but when she laughed, it caught people off guard, like the sound didn't match the body it came from. She loved word puzzles, her dog Nino, and lemon-flavored anything, and she hated Mondays, not because of school, because of Brody Kessler. The eighth. Grade shadow that always loomed too long. He never hit her. That wasn't his style. But Brody believed in the slow crush, the kind of bullying that makes you question whether it even happened, the cruel nicknames whispered in the hallway, the way he'd mimic the sound of her chair squeaking just loud enough, the fake smile when he held the door open and said, "After you, Your Highness." The worst part? Other kids would laugh, not because they thought it was funny, because they didn't want to be next. That morning, Alina had almost made it to the front ramp when she saw them. Brody and two of his backup dancers, Finn and Jace. Three shadows blocking the way. She tried to veer left. Brody stepped in front of her. "Race you to the ramp," he said, grin twitching like a warning. "I'll even give you a head start." Finn laughed. "Don't forget to oil those wheels first." Alina's hands clenched the push rims of her chair. She didn't say anything. She never did. But this time, Brody bent down, too close, and then, in one motion, sharp, practiced, he jerked the front wheels sideways. It wasn't enough to flip her, but enough to send her sideways. Lurching, her backpack hit the pavement first. She followed with a soft grunt and the sick thump of plastic against concrete. For a moment, no one moved. The air went still. Then came the laughter, scattered, uneasy. But it came. Finn high-fived Jace. Brody stood over her, hands in his pockets. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Alina blinked up at the sky. It looked like it might cry, but it didn't. Neither did she. She whispered something to herself. A name. That was when another figure stepped forward. Not teacher, not a friend. Someone no one really noticed before. A girl in 7th grade. Skin like cinnamon bark and hair pulled into two clean braids. Her name was Zora Lynn, and everything was about to change. Zora Lynn had never made a scene before. She liked books, sketching birds in the margins of her science notes, drinking jasmine tea with her grandmother on weekends. She wasn't the kind of girl people remembered in the yearbook, but that day, standing at the edge of the crowd, she felt something in her chest spark like flint against steel. She had seen enough. Zora pushed through the circle of gawking students, her boots clicking sharp against the sidewalk. She knelt next to Alina without saying a word, her hands gentle, her eyes fierce. Alina's voice was barely a breath. "I'm okay." Zora didn't answer. She checked for scrapes, brushed gravel from Alina's hoodie, and helped her sit up. Then she stood, slowly, deliberately. "What's funny?" she asked, voice even. Brody cocked his head. "Who even are you?" Someone who noticed. The laughter died. Students shifted. A teacher appeared in the distance but didn't move closer. Zora raised her voice. "Is this what we do? Now? Hurt people and laugh?" Brody rolled his eyes. "It was just a joke." Zora stepped closer. "No, it wasn't." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was like thunder rolled behind her words. Finn muttered something and tugged Jace's sleeve. They melted, back into the crowd. Brody stayed, but his smirk had faltered. Zora looked down at Alina. "Let's get you inside." Alina nodded. Together, they made their way to the entrance. Zora pushing the chair with surprising care. Neither of them said much, but something shifted. A thread pulled tight between them. In first period English, Zora sat 2 rows behind Brody. She didn't look at him, but he looked back, again and again. That afternoon after the final bell, Zora walked to the front office. She asked to see Vice Principal Calder. "I'd like to propose something," she said. The secretary raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" Zora smiled slightly. "An opportunity for change." Inside the office, Mr. Calder sat with his usual lukewarm coffee and spreadsheets. He blinked. When Zora entered, "Miss Lynn, everything okay? I want to speak at the assembly on Thursday." He tilted his head. "About what?" "Respect." Silence. "What happens when no one speaks up?" He stared at her. "We've never had a student lead one of those." Zora nodded. "Then maybe it's time." That night she wrote her speech in pencil, erased and rewrote each line 3 times. Across town, Alina sat at her kitchen table, a bowl of rice porridge in front of her. Her mom kissed the top of her head. "You okay today, Mija?" Alina looked out. The window, thought about braids and a voice like thunder. "Yeah," she whispered. "I think I am." The Unity Challenge was always more symbolic than competitive. A half-day event with team games, relay races, and awkward trust falls meant to encourage togetherness. This year it felt different, because Zora Lynn was about to make sure it did. 2 days after the incident, she approached Coach Halberd. "Can I form my own team for the challenge?" He looked over his clipboard. "Normally teams are randomized, Zora." She didn't blink. "I have a reason." He raised an eyebrow. "Is it a good one?" Zora nodded. "It will be." The morning of the Unity Challenge, the sky cleared for the first time in a week. Kids swarmed the backfield in bright t-shirts and sneakers that squeaked on the dew-soaked grass. Brody, Finn, and Jace stood off to the side, all 3 wearing green, team shirts, laughing like nothing had ever happened, until they saw the team captain walking toward them, clipboard in hand, hair braided tight. Zora Brody straightened. "You're our leader?" "For this event, yes." "Why?" Zora smiled just enough. "Because I asked to be." Each round tested cooperation, wheelbarrow races, blindfold walks, and finally the obstacle relay. Zora walked them through the rules. 4 stations. The final leg required pushing a teammate in a wheelchair around the cone-marked loop. Brody snorted. "Seriously?" Zora pointed. "You're pushing." "Pushing who?" She nodded toward the start line. Alina wearing a bright red bandana and a determined look. Brody blinked. "You're kidding." "Nope." Coach Halberd blew the whistle. The race began. They stumbled through the first 3 stations, barely cooperating, and then it was Brody's turn. He jogged to Alina, grabbed the handles, pushed too fast. The chair wobbled. "Slow down," Alina muttered. "You're tilting me." He grunted. Steadied, grass turned to gravel, his arms burned. The crowd quieted. They made the turn, then the final stretch. Zora clapped from the sidelines. Alina raised her hand with the baton. They crossed the line. The team didn't win first, but they didn't finish last, and something else happened. People clapped, not out of pity, but because they saw it. The effort, the growth, the change. Brody looked at his hands on the chair's grips, and for the first time all week he didn't say a word. Thursday came fast, and with it a buzz in the air that felt heavier than morning fog. Whispers traveled through the hallways. Some kids rolled their eyes, others leaned in, curious. Because no one really knew what Zora Lynn was going to say. Not even Elena. She sat beside Zora backstage, fiddling with the corner of her sleeve. "Are you nervous?" she asked. Zora looked out toward the gym full of students. She nodded. "Yeah, but that's why I have to do it." The principal took the mic, did the usual announcements, then cleared his throat. "We have a special moment today. One of our students asked to speak." A few heads turned, a few whispers. Zora stepped into the light, her braids neat, her voice calm. "Most of you saw what happened on Monday." Silence. You could hear the creak of the bleachers. Some laughed, some looked away, and some of you just didn't care. She paused. But Elena didn't fall because of her wheelchair. She fell because someone made her feel small. A ripple through the crowd. Brody shifted in his seat. Zora glanced at him, then back to the mic. "We talk about kindness in posters, in class rules. But kindness means nothing if we don't speak up." She motioned behind her. Elena wheeled forward, took the mic with a steady hand. "My name is Elena Cortez," she began, her voice soft, but it carried. "I've had to learn to get up by myself. She paused. "I thought I was invisible. Until I wasn't." Elena looked straight at Zora, then at the crowd. "Someone saw me, not the chair, me." A long pause. "You don't have to be loud to be strong, but sometimes strength is speaking when everyone else stays silent." She rolled back. Zora stepped beside her. They didn't wait for applause, but it came, slow, then, rising. A wave. Even the teachers stood. Brody stared at the gym floor, not moving, not smirking. When the bell rang, kids spilled into the hallways different. Some nodded at Zora, others looked at Elena with new eyes. Brody walked alone, until he stopped. Near the library, Elena was there, reading, Zora beside her. Laughing softly, he approached. "Hey," he mumbled. Zora looked up. Elena closed her book. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," Brody said. "It was just..." Zora cut in. "You didn't think. That's the part that matters." Brody nodded, turned to Elena. "I'm sorry. For real. I was being a jerk." Elena studied his face, then nodded. "I forgive you, but I need you to do better." He hesitated. "If you ever want help fixing the chair or whatever." "I'm good with tools." Zora raised an eyebrow. Elena smiled. "Just barely." "We'll see," and that was enough. By Friday, something had shifted. It wasn't loud, but it was real. In the cafeteria, someone moved their tray so Elena could roll up to their table. In math class, Zora got a sticky note that said, "Thank you." No name, just purple ink and shaky handwriting. Even the morning announcements felt different. Less noise, more listening. Brody didn't try to be a hero, but he did show up. One morning, he held the library door open for Elena. Didn't say a word, just nodded. She nodded back, and that was enough. Mr. Calder invited Zora to a staff meeting, asked her to talk about what students needed. She brought notes and stories, and when she finished, even Mrs. Plimpton, who never smiled, said, "We should do more of this." So they did. The school launched a peer forum, called it The Circle. Every Friday during homeroom, kids could speak, not be judged, not be fixed, just be heard. Elena was the first to volunteer. She spoke about learning to tie her shoes without standing, about how hard it is to raise your hand when people stare. She didn't cry. She didn't have to. The room was already quiet. By the end of the month, more students joined. A boy who stuttered, a girl who had been homeschooled for years. Even Finn showed up. He didn't speak, but he sat near the front, and that meant something. Then came the talent showcase, an annual school tradition. Usually, it was guitar solos, lip syncs, magic tricks with too many scarves. But this year, Zora had an idea. She asked Elena, "You ever perform?" Elena shook her head. Never. Zora smiled. Want to try? They met in the library after school, wrote a spoken word piece together, called it Still Waters, about silence and thunder and how strength doesn't always roar. They practiced every day for 2 weeks, reading lines, swapping stanzas, finding rhythm in their voices. When the day came, they wore matching denim jackets. Zora walked, Elena rolled. The gym was packed, phones out, parents in the back row. Zora began. They told me. Silence was weakness, Elena continued. But I've learned silence is power. Back and forth, like waves. Their words rippled through the room. The crowd held its breath until the final line. We don't need permission to be heard. A pause. Then, applause, louder than anyone expected. Even Principal Harper stood. Afterward, someone taped a note to Elena's locker. It read, "You were fire. Keep burning." She kept it there all year. And in the months that followed, the school kept changing, not overnight, but piece by piece. A mural was painted in the hallway. 2 figures, one walking, one wheeling, both looking forward. Above them, in bold letters, "Respect doesn't whisper, it speaks." No plaque, no signatures, just truth. And every time Elena passed it, she smiled, because it wasn't just art, it was a promise. And it was hers. Summer arrived with its usual mix of long days and humming sprinklers. The hallways of Juniper Creek grew quieter. Lockers emptied, yearbooks filled with scribbled hearts and inside jokes. But something stayed behind. Something invisible. Something lasting. Elena spent her last week at Juniper Creek packing up books and cleaning out her locker. She was heading to Northridge High in the fall, a school with better accessibility, a poetry club, and, most importantly, new beginnings. Zora stayed. 1 damned more year. But their bond didn't fade. They made a pact. Weekly check-ins, monthly poem swaps, and a promise. Never let silence settle where truth belongs. Elena's last day came with little fanfare. Just hugs, a few tears, and one surprise. In the cafeteria, taped to her usual table, was a sign. Handwritten, bold letters. Reserved for Elena and Co. She laughed, rolled up slowly, and took one last look around, back at Zora, who gave a small salute. Outside, her mom waited in the car, engine humming, windows down. Elena paused by the mural, touched the wheel on the painted chair. "You ready, Mika?" her mom called. Elena nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." Over the summer, she and her mom took a road trip, stopped in Selma, walked the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Elena rolled every inch of it. Her mom told her stories about her grandfather. Marching. For justice, about courage, about legacy. Sometimes strength rolls quietly, she said, but it always moves forward. Back in Juniper Creek, things kept shifting. Mr. Calder asked Zora to help lead a new student council, not just for events, but for equity, for accountability. She agreed. Brought ideas, structure, heart. By October, the circle had doubled in size. Kids shared more, listened harder. Even Jace showed up. Zora didn't speak every time, but when she did, people leaned in. In the art wing, a new mural began, drawn by students, guided by stories, and every so often, a new 6th grader would pause in front, but trace the bold letters, ask who were they, and someone would answer, Elena Cortez, Zora Lynn. They stood up or sat strong and made us see things differently, because sometimes the loudest stories don't shout. They unfold like quiet revolutions that begin with a whisper and end with a legacy. Maybe you've been Elena, maybe you've been Zora, maybe without meaning to, you were Brody, but now you know. You've seen what it looks like to stand up or sit tall. So here's the ask. Don't let this story end here. Share it. Talk about it. Let it start a conversation in your school, your kitchen, your heart. And if you're feeling something right now, anything, drop it in the comments. Not for views, but for Elena, for Zora, for every kid still waiting for someone to see them. Because strength isn't just what you show, it's who you lift. and who you never let fall again.